What is going on, everybody? My name is Kneeckoh. Welcome back to another Pokemon Scarlet and Violet VGC video. Today we are talking about the future of VGC because it looks like there's no end in sight for Scarlet and Violet. Today I got Dom with me.
Hello, thanks for having me again.
Evan's with me again.
Yes, I don't go away.
So like I said, yeah, it looks like there's no end in sight for Scarlet and Violet. We thought Legend ZA was going to come out early next year and maybe we get Gen 10. We're coming up on 3 years of Scarlet and Violet, and it looks like we're probably not getting a new game until 2026 for VGC, unless ZA surprises us and has VGC in it. So I wanted to talk about today what the potential future formats are going to be, because we've got quite a bit of time that we still have to kill before we get to Gen 10. Now, we all already know that we're going back to Regulation G following Regulation H. So, I mean, we know what's coming, and that'll likely run till April, I'm assuming.
Yeah, I think it was already confirmed.
Is it confirmed? Yeah, I with the cycle that they've been going, it makes sense. We'll have 3 regulations next year. It'll be Reg G again, then whatever Reg I will be, and then, you know, another one that'll close out the year, and then I'll save it for later when we get to that point. But I already know what 2026 is going to be, if that's the schedule that they're on. But what would you guys want to see after going back to Reg G?
No Terra Reg G.
Okay, Reg I, no Terra, Reg G.
Probably not Reg I. I don't think they will do a Worlds format with no Terra. I could see it being the format afterwards, like Reg H. Is now the kind of the format where they stepped out of the general line or direction they were going before. But yeah, I would like to see that afterwards, maybe.
No, and we talked about this in the Terra video. I definitely think a no Terra format would be really interesting, especially, and I'll just say it. I mean, if we go to 2026 and we don't get Gen 10 till then, we're definitely 2026 is just going to be dual restricted format. Dual restricted with Terra. It's going to be, I'm excited for it. I think there's a lot of cool options, especially with the new Pokemon that they've added. I think there's a lot of cool options for dual restricted, but I think that's a really good way to line it up, having it be after Worlds. We have this kind of dull period where there's no tournaments happening, and we can go no Terra for a bit, kind of enjoy what Pokemon is without Terra, and then get excited to go back to terrestrialization with dual restricteds. I think that would be a really nice cadence, at least in my opinion.
See, I can't help but assume that 2025 Worlds is going to be double restricted, though, because like we're going back to single restricted until April. So I have to, because that's what it's always been. The third year of any generation has always been double restricted for Worlds. So I have to assume that that's what 2025 Worlds was going to be. So then I don't know, if, like, assuming we're on Scarlet and Violet for 2026 World as well, I don't know.
We will get triple restricted. I'm calling it now.
I think I retire from Pokemon.
Oh man, that would be wild. See, if Gen 10 doesn't come out till 2026, I just don't see them doing, even though that's how they've done, you know, their cadence so far. On the 3rd year, it's always dual restricted. I just don't think it happens if we don't get a new game until 2026, because I don't know what VGC would be. How do you continue to generate excitement and hype for VGC if you have once again do dual restricteds again? Because I don't think they change it if they were to do it for 2025 going into 2026.
Yeah, so I like something else they could always do is like revisit older regulations. Like I know a lot of people had wanted 2024 Worlds to originally just be Regulation F, which I think would have been fine. And then if they'd done Regulation F for Worlds, then, you know, 2025 Worlds, who could have done single restricted, 2026 double restricted. They didn't do that, and I don't know if they'll I mean, after they went back to Regulation H here, where they banned everything, there's no saying they won't go back to something else. Like, they might throw us Reg F again.
Yeah.
Which, like, I also think, like, Regulation F with no Terra could be very interesting.
Oh yeah, that could be very cool.
That could be cool. Let's talk about the no Terra for a second, because I think that adds a lot of weird variants. For one, we talked about this in the Terra video as well. Our Chaludon and Sneasler get so much worse in a no Terra format, because they can't escape. Like, looking at our Chaludon, it likes to go Terra Grass a lot. It can avoid the ground type damage from that. You take neutral damage from, fighting type attacks. So there's that element to that. That Pokemon, I think, gets significantly worse. Sneasler especially, you're able to hit it with Expanding Force. It can't Terra Dark to escape that kind of damage. I think that Pokemon just really takes a tank in usage if we have no Terra. But I also think if we did Reg G no Terra for the no Terra format, other Pokemon that I think we could see pop up a lot, I think we could see a resurgence of Urshifu Single Strike. Simply because of the fact, like, Calyrex Shadow Rider, very good. Obviously, Calyrex Ice Rider, very good. But they can't get away from that weakness anymore. And that's really, really solid for Urshifu Single Strike. Especially because Fluttermane, which is normally a problem for that Pokemon, can't get away from the neutral damage. And being that Fluttermane isn't particularly bulky, it has a really hard time taking a Wicked Blow.
Yeah, and even if you go slightly bulkier, you can still, like, imagine you have a Urshifu and Raging Bolt on the field, or like Urshifu and Rillaboom. You have so much priority. You can always threaten double priority into Fluttermane and basically guarantee a pin on that slot. Fluttermane will never be safe on the field.
Yeah. So yeah, I think for that reason, both the Calyrexes would be in worse shape. They'd still be good, but they'd be in a little bit of a trickier position. Especially Calyrex Shadow would be in a trickier position. But another Pokemon that, like, saw usage, it wasn't like top tier. Koraidon. Koraidon would definitely have problems in that format.
Well, the issue with Koraidon is unless, like, you go, like, with some bulk on it, Whimsicott can literally just one-shot Koraidon. And Whimsicott, 50-50 on especially close team sheet, whether or not it's going to be Covert Cloak or Focus Sash. But I think if, like, Timid Whimsicott outspeeds Adamant Koraidon, so you can just always Moonblast and remove the restricted immediately.
Mm-hmm. The interesting one, and we talked about this in the Terra video, for a no Terra format, would be Terapagos. That would be very, very awkward. And I feel like would see almost little to no play outside of, like, maybe like a Comfey setup Terapagos, where you're just out there, just abusing the Terra Shell.
I mean, I could still I could see it as a like Limora has been used a bit, like that Meteor Beam bot, especially with the Terra Shell, it being super safe, like basically like living every hit you can throw at it when it's full HP, getting a guaranteed Meteor Beam off, and then with the right support, then still spamming +1 single target Starstorm deals super good damage.
Mm-hmm.
Like I could still see it being played. But I think it would also depend on which other restricteds are good. If I would assume Zamazenta stays pretty good. And with that, Terapagos would have a hard time again. But yeah.
Well, I mean, the nice thing with Terapagos is, like, you get no benefit from Terastallization outside of the Terra Starstorm boost and the stat boost, right? So, I mean, the matchups that it had tough times into before, it's still going to have tough times into. So that doesn't change your game plan too much, at least with that particular Pokemon, which I think is a benefit that Terapagos has that the others do not. The other Pokemon we talked about in the Terra video was Ogerpon. Ogerpon's way different in a meta without terrestrialization. And I think personally Cornerstone and Wellspring are going to be the only two that see play if we go that route. Obviously you're going to use Cornerstone as the same as you used it before. It's going to set up Trick Room. You're going to follow me, set up Trick Room. And be able to then get in, you know, whatever expanding force user and like just sweep. And then Wellspring still good as a counter into Urshifu Rapid Strike, or any water type for that matter, looking at like Kyogre as well. Still able to deal with those Pokemon extremely well. But the other two, their abilities just don't matter too much. Because what was good about the Teal Mask Ogerpon was that like you got the Defiant boost and then you were able to terrestrialize and get the speed boost. But without the terrestrialization, it's kind of in an awkward spot.
I think Reg G already, like with Cornerstone and Wellspring having the biggest usage of the Ogerpons in Reg G, we already saw what happens when you're most likely not wanting to Terra your Ogerpon. As you say, like Heart Flame and Teal Mask kind of want those stat boosts because they help them be offensive.
Yeah.
But those other two just have abilities they can utilize in the meta, especially with Urshifu and like Calyrex Eyes wanting to set up Trick Room. And you live a guaranteed hit with Sturdy. That was quite nice. And you are always like, okay, I mainly want to Terra my restricted, so do I really want to run the Heart Flame Ogerpon? It got some usage on the Miraidon teams for Spore Redirect as for the grass and fire typing, which was quite nice in a lot of matchups it had problems with. But outside of the Miraidon team, Heart Flame was not really picked up.
I definitely, speaking of Miraidon, I think Miraidon actually changes quite a bit in the non-Terra format. Because it's already like a weird 50-50 against another Miraidon, but it gets even worse when you're basically just coin flipping if you speed tie on who's going to Draco Meteor first.
Well, yeah. At that point, of like Miraidon with no Terra, you are 100% of the time just always running a 2-5-2, 2-5-2 timid spread. And you're just always going to try to go for those speed ties at worst.
It also, I mean, the matchup was already a challenge against Calyrex Ice. It gets so much worse, being that it can't get away from that ice weakness.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah, I mean, but there's one thing is the Miraidon teams liked to have, or like, at least the early ones like to have Cornerstone Ogerpon. So you could easily just, Volt switch your Miraidon out and Ivy Cudgel into Ice Rider and move, unless they have, Fake Out or Follow Me, which they usually do, but
oh yeah,
definitely like it's still manageable, but yeah, the matchup definitely becomes worse.
So what is because I mean we've talked about no Terra format, we've talked about double restricted. What do we think this other format is going to be to split that gap?
I wonder about them possibly going back to like what we did in Sword and Shield and giving us a ban list format. I think that's potentially an option. It just kind of is dependent on which format are they using as a ban list format. Do they use a Regulation H ban list? Do they use a Regulation G ban list? Or even revisit to Regulation F with ban list?
I think that could be interesting. We go back to Reg G for a bit, and then they give us a ban list for Reg H, and then we go back into Reg G with no Terra. I think that could be a really cool variance. What I think would also be pretty cool is doing Reg B in the same style as Reg H. I think that would be really, really cool. Get the Paradox Pokemon with the expanded decks. I think that would be a lot of fun.
Oh yeah, that could be cool.
we would definitely see the fall of dragons again, because we would have everyone's favorite Flutter Mane back.
Yeah, I think
Oh yeah.
I think that would be a lot of fun personally.
Definitely, I do think that could be a very fun format. And seeing that they gave us Regulation H, which was the fan made A++ format, I do think we could potentially see that format come into play at some
Yeah,
point.
I also think that's pretty likely because they also rushed the regional decks formats, right?
Mhm.
Because like we had the first worlds on the home update format with Hydra and Tornadoes and everything. And we like I don't know, what was it, 2 months of Reg A and stuff like that.
Yeah.
So yeah, it was super short, and so extending that that format where like paradoxes are the main powerhouses, or the rune Pokemon then as well, could be very likely.
I think what also could be cool is they do a format where you have, let's say it's Reg B++, but make it a full game regional dex format where the only restricted you can use are the ones that are in Scarlet and Violet. Not saying that, you know, the ones you get from Snacksworth or whatever that guy's name is, that you get to use those, but you get to use the Pokemon that are available and can be caught normally in the DLC, and then use, you know, Koraidon, Miraidon, and Terapagos.
Yeah, so we'd be, at that point, we'd be cutting out Calyraxes,
Yes.
Venta.
I think that could be interesting. I don't know how it would turn out, but I think it could be really interesting.
It could be interesting. I would rather think you would do that with more of a rec with only sub legendaries like Ogapon and stuff like that. Just because I think that Koraidon has a pretty huge advantage against at least Terapagos, and I think, yeah, I don't see that triple or that trio being nice in a format to play into matchup wise. I think that would limit it too much.
That's fair, especially if we're going at if we're saying that we go back to Reg G and then whatever is in the middle is going to be the Worlds format before we go to a no Terra format and then dual restricteds. We got to assume this is going, whatever's in that gap is the next Worlds format, and I kind of agree with you, Dom, that wouldn't make a ton of sense for a Worlds format.
Yeah, it's hard to know what kind of format they're gonna do, especially after they went from single restricted into banning stuff. It's really hard to sit here and say like, oh, you know, like this is probably what the next format will be, because like we have the assumption that, because I'm gonna say this, and I'm pretty sure Andy had a video about it, that potentially 2025 Worlds is double restricted, and perhaps we do get a year of VGC on Legends EA, because there is, and this is getting to the speculations of it, but from that Game Freak Terra leak, it was kind of somewhat confirmed that the release date is supposed to be sometime between April and July, which means ZA would be out before Worlds 2025, which means they could transition us into Legends EA for the 2026 season.
It could. Is there anything in the leaks that indicate that there are double battles, like the battle is a traditional Pokemon style, or are they doing something similar to Arceus where there were the Agile and whatever the other style was?
Yeah, there wasn't really anything huge in the leak regarding ZA. The leaker did kind of say that he wasn't going to leak too much about the actual, like, the unreleased games.
Yeah.
They don't, like, scrap them or something.
Because I mean, that would be cool. I would like to see ZA be the VGC game. I think that would be awesome, because personally, I am starting to get burnt out on Scarlet and Violet. I think that would be really, really cool. But I just don't know. just based on Arceus, and then also based on BDSP. Because in the past they weren't scared to put their competitive games in the remakes like they did with Aurus, but they didn't do it with BDSP, and that kind of like threw me for a loop a little bit, because like we had Sword and Shield for a long time as well. So we had two games that both had the ability to play VGC, and they didn't move VGC to the newest game available. So that's kind of where I'm like, I don't know if ZA is gonna have any sort of VGC scene.
Yeah, I think the main reason why VGC stayed on Sword and Shield was because, one, BDSP is not a Game Freak game, it's ILCA.
Yeah.
Legends Arceus was a very much experimental game, so they didn't want to move they probably didn't want to move their competitive over to this new format of a game unless they knew that fans were going to buy this game. But I think after fans like the game, people are going to buy it. So perhaps they do move, especially with Mega Evolution being like very like, it is a battle gimmick. Having that into a Legends game makes me feel like it's probably going to be a more battle focused game than Legends Arceus was.
I like the idea. I like the idea of that. I just they have to basically just make Legends more similar to the mainline games. They need to make it EVs and IVs need to be the same, because they were different in Legends. I don't remember exactly how they were different, but we didn't have like vitamins and stuff to train up the Pokemon. It was a different system entirely, and I feel like if they continue that going into ZA, it gets a little too convoluted knowing which game you're prepping for and having to have all that excess knowledge versus just using the knowledge that you already have from Scarlet and Violet, from Sword and Shield, from any of the other VGC games that you've played over the years, to then try and learn this new one for a year or two until Gen 10 comes out.
Yeah, it's hard to know because we don't know basically anything about Legends ZA as of right now, so it's kind of hard to be like it's it's going to be a more modern day set game or something. So perhaps it's going to be modern battle mechanics instead of that weird battle system that we got in Legends Z or Legends Arceus was. It's kind of up in the air at the moment because we have no real knowledge about the game.
Yeah. Like, if we are thinking about staying in Scarlet and Violet, I would most likely like to see the Reg G No Terra or Reg F No Terra, and the sub-legends allowed, so like basically Reg F regional decks. I think that could be really fun, especially with the amount of sub-legendaries we got with the Ruinous Pokemon and the Ogapons, and also the other DLC legendaries, the Paradox legendaries like Raging Bolt and everything. I think that could be a really cool format.
Yeah, that format would be really cool. The main interesting thing about that format would be the loss of the genies. We wouldn't have Tornadus or Landorus anymore. So it'd be really interesting to see how those not being available would impact the meta. Because I do think Urshifu would not be quite as... Or Urshifu Rapid Strike anyways wouldn't be quite as good since Tornadus isn't there.
Urshifu wouldn't be in the game. Urshifu's not in the decks in Scarlet and Violet.
It's one we get from Snacksworth, right?
Yeah.
Oh, I thought we were keeping those out. I thought I was more referring to only mons you have in the decks.
Or the one, like.
I think that would be cool. I think that would be really interesting. Is that also excluding? I guess you can catch the Hisuimons in the Terra Dome.
That would be interesting.
Like Sneasler, Cleavor, those are all catchable in the Dome. I think you can get White Stripe Basculin as well, so you can get Basculin Legion. So there are methods of obtaining some of those. I don't think all of them.
Yeah, I don't think Sneasler is in the game. I know you get the gift Hisuian Growlithe. You can get Basculin Legion. You can get Cleavor. I don't know if there's any other Hisui Pokemon you can.
Let me double check.
No,
it's only in the Hisui decks.
Yeah, because I
Interesting.
know that it's hard because there's some of the Hisuian Pokemon that there's no reason why they like Stantler, for example. There's no reason they couldn't have let us evolve that in Scarlet and Violet in
Yeah.
the Weird Year. They just made it so it can't learn the move it needs to evolve in Scarlet and Violet. It needs to be in Legends Arceus, which I think is kind of a unfortunate thing because like if they let that be there, we could have been using Weird Year back in Regulation A.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Well, I think we're gonna cut it here. We've been going almost a half an hour. There's definitely some options. I think there's a lot of cool options for Scarlet and Violet. I think the cooler option is us going to ZA, and that's my opinion. How likely that is, I don't really know. But I think that's definitely the more interesting option. I think a lot of people at this point, like I can see it just in my like view count, people are just losing interest in Scarlet and Violet. People are starting to fall off. This game's been out for 3 years. They're ready for something new. So I think if they want to continue the success that they've had with VGC, they need to speed up the process of getting us into a new VGC game. Whether or not that actually happens, I don't know. That's the thing, is people want longer development times because of, you know, issues like obviously Scarlet and Violet still has a lot of graphical issues that were never fixed. So people want longer development time, but from a competitive standpoint, if you want to grow the scene, you need more content coming out more frequently. And that it's almost a discussion for a whole other video of how they should handle DLC moving forward. I think almost they need 2 DLC packs, like outside of like the whole Teal Mask and Indigo Disc. That was the hidden treasure of Area Zero. They need another 2 DLCs in 1 pack deal, I think, to really make the games last as long as they need them to for the development time.
Yeah, but I don't think just putting in more options on Mons would be healthy for VGC, to be honest. Just because you have too much to account for then.
Potentially. I mean, I didn't play VGC back when we had national decks, so I don't know how heavily it would actually impact. Because I feel like a lot of the Pokemon that are missing, like things like Beedrill, like and Butterfree, like a lot of the Pokemon that are missing, I feel like aren't like big heavy hitter Pokemon. So like, you could be right. You could be totally right. They haven't done it yet, so I don't know if I'm 100% on the same page there. Because I think eventually you add that many Pokemon and some of the stuff that's good right now just falls off and you never see it again, and we lose a lot of that variance. The meta will re-centralize around the stuff that just outperforms.
Yeah, that's true. That's true.
But like I said, we're gonna close this one up. We're so close to the half-hour mark. Hopefully you guys all enjoyed the video. Let me know your thoughts on what you would like to see from the future formats of VGC, at least until we get Gen 10, if that is transferring to ZA. Leave that comment below. Thanks Dom, thanks Evan for hopping in. If you guys want to share Reg Age teams to be featured here on the channel, or just want a place to hang out and talk Pokemon, check out the Discord. But until next time, peace.